I'd like to give some time to our amazing, amazing sponsor, Threadline. Hi, Christian, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
I am doing great. Are you enjoying Congress?
Yeah, it's really fun. It's my first. And
Is it?
yeah, it's been super exciting. Great to be in person again. And I'd never been to Toronto, even though I'm just in the country below. But yeah, it's been really great so far. So thanks for having me.
It's my first Congress as well.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I have only great things to say about it.
Absolutely.
Now, Christian is founder and CEO of Threadline, one of our sponsors, as I have mentioned. And Threadline combines narrative psychology and behavioral economics to actually establish an approach to marketing and design. How does this happen? Please do explain.
Yeah, so my background, I have a PhD in psychology, and I focused on understanding consumer identity and looking at the way brands impact the way people feel about themselves, right? So people that buy apples because they think they're creative, and they buy New Balances because they want to get fit, and things like that. And so in studying identity, you fall into a space called narrative psychology, which is the psychology of storytelling, and you realize that people's identities are defined by the stories they tell themselves. And when I started to realize that, I've been working in this industry for 20 years. I got my PhD while in the industry. And I realized we should be using this in our methods, right? And so if we can draw those stories out, if we can understand those stories, then the brands we work with can make a really meaningful impact on people's lives and the stories that they tell, right? So rather than positioning towards a need of, oh, you're starting to look old and wrinkly, you should buy this makeup sort of thing. It's you can fit into a story that is, oh, you're trying to accomplish this really amazing task. This might help, right? And you're trying to be an amazing parent, and here's a tool or a resource or a brand that you might use. So it really just sort of all came together around that idea and the role of stories in people's lives.
Wow. Well, do you know, as a marketer, I'm very interested in storytelling. I think the best way for you to actually reach someone is through their emotions. And like you said, it's exactly what storytelling does.
Yeah.
But I was researching Threadline, of course, because I want to know who's sponsoring us. And I've seen that you have a huge tier of services that you offer, one of which is market research. So how does it all tie together?
Sure. So what we say is, if you ultimately want to influence someone, you have to first understand their story. And so we primarily do market research and brand strategy work, and to have the most effective brand strategy work, you ultimately need really solid insights. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is, in many cases, we ask questions of participants in research, and what we get are answers. It feels like a quiz, right? And oftentimes the answers they're giving us are what they think we want to hear.
Yes.
And when you ask someone to tell a story about an experience, right, to tell you about how they became a fan of that product, how they entered the category, why they choose this brand over and over and over again, when someone tells a story, they're tapping into a different part of the brain. They're tapping into a different part of the mind. And so rather than thinking of the right answer, they're telling you about experiences and emotions and relationships and tensions and conflicts and struggles that they've had, as well as the successes and the happy endings and the way they felt through it all. And so so that sort of narrative approach in the insights then as the anchor really helps clients understand then, okay, if this is their story, where do we fit? And what role can we play in that story? And the big thing we tell brands all the time is, at the end of the day, your brand is not the hero, and that can be hard to hear, but the consumer is the hero, and it's the consumer's story that you've really got to focus on, and you've really got to protect and enhance and transform.
Wow. I assume that with such in-depth research, you get a lot of data. How do you analyze it all? Because it's not as simple as yes and no.
Yeah, no, it's much more nuanced. We often tell folks watching the research that we do can feel a lot like watching a therapy session more than a focus group. And there is a lot of really ultimately sort of pattern recognition, right? We have, I have a team of social scientists. I myself am a psychologist. I have an anthropologist on the team. I have another affective psychologist on the team who focuses on emotion. And so it's really about analyzing and understanding the patterns in those interviews and the shapes of those stories, right? And when you hear 15 people tell a story that sounds very similar and has very similar tensions and things like that, you start to identify what are these real insights. And and we tell clients, right, there are always limitations to qualitative work, but what we do is we really sort of identify those core nuggets and then we recommend validate that on a larger scale with quant work, or explore that through creative concepts and then test that to see how well it resonates, things like that.
Wow, it sounds all very interesting.
Thank
really.
you.
Christian, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for believing in us enough to sponsor us.
Well, thanks for gathering and curating this community. I do really appreciate it.
I do hope you get to enjoy the rest of the Congress.
Oh, we will.
And I hope to see you again.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you want to know more about Threadline, you can always enter their website. It's thread-line.co.